Hello, KNW fans. So as you can see here, I've got both of my bridges done for my I-135 crossover on my Wichita Yard. So I'm going to do a how I do stuff video on how I built this bridge, and specifically just on this one section. Since there's two sections, I'm going to show you how I built it, just so you have an awareness of how that came together. So hang on. Okay, so first of all, I need to make 8 of these supports for the bridge itself. 2 of them will be paired together to make a single one. But to make a single one of these, you need 2 of these sets of sprues, and I believe 6 of them come in a single kit. So I'm going to put this together real quick and show you what that looks like. All right, I've got all the parts separated from the sprues, got the burrs cleaned off. There are a couple extra parts. These 3 here aren't needed. And I think this is pretty common on a lot of plastic model kits. It's just cheaper to make a bunch of copies of the same sprue than it is to make a bunch of separate ones. So there's oftentimes a lot of extra parts, and that's what there is here. You don't need this many of these strips with the holes and without to make a single one of those. So that's what we've got here. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this now. Okay, for assembly, I'm going to be using this Tamiya ultra or extra thin cement. It's got a neat little brush on the cap that just makes it easier for application. And on this kit, there's not really any tabs or little posts and holes to help you guide things. So unfortunately, what that leaves for me is not a professional modeler by any stretch, is just using too much glue. So try not to fault me too much for that. I've not yet found a better way to do this. So we'll just see how this works out. The nice thing I like about this stuff, and until about 1.5 years ago, I didn't even know it existed, but it's a game changer for putting things together because you can get parts to fit as closely as possible and then apply the glue second. And then you just have to hold the pieces together while it sets up in just a few seconds. The glue does dry really fast though, so if you don't get it just right off the bat, sometimes you have to apply a little extra. But I need to put this top part on now anyway. And I just haven't found a better way to do this. So if anybody has a better way, I'm all ears. Like I said though, it does set up fast, so just after a few seconds of holding it in place, it's at least tacky enough that it will hold itself together. And then you can add more as you need. You'll see me shake the bottle, and the reason why is this brush does not reach the bottom of the bottle. And that's a little bit annoying because once you get the bottle about half empty, it's hard to get any glue on the brush. So if you shake it a little bit, it splashes onto the brush and solves your problem. Not sure why they didn't allow the brush to be a little bit longer. I'm sure there's a reason. I just haven't figured out what that is. Of course, now the trick is to hold things in place without gluing yourself to the plastic. But this isn't like, super glue you see in the movies where my fingers are probably stuck together for the rest of my life or need surgery. It's nothing that bad. Just gets a little tacky. Might leave a fingerprint on the model, which isn't a big deal because I obviously plan to paint it, but I got that top part on. Just debris out of here. And the interesting thing about this glue, and it could be just physics, I don't know, but I've only really noticed it with this glue, is it tends to find gaps and fill them, which is also a pretty neat little feature. Plus it's really thin, so gravity definitely does its part. And see, just a little bit of pressure and you can start to see bubbles start to stick out. And that's how you know it's sticking. And it may not seem like wiping glue on the outside of these edges is doing anything, but trust me, it's working just fine. If you've never tried this kind of glue, I highly recommend it. It's not super expensive. I think I got one of these bottles on Amazon for maybe $4. So I went ahead and ordered 2. And sorry if the price has changed since I bought them, but that's what I remember them costing. All right, so we have that element done. We'll set that aside. Next, I'll do this base. You gotta be careful on this one because there's a beveled edge on one side and a flat edge on the other, so you don't want to get those wrong. And it may not seem like I'm putting much glue on theirs, but it doesn't take very much at all. I try not to use too much, but the nice thing about this thin glue is once it dries, you can't hardly even tell where you've used too much. And then, like I said, this stuff gravity works, so I can just put a drop here at the top, and it'll just run right down the joint. You can see what I'm doing now. Now I'm going to reiterate, I am not a professional model builder by any stretch. I'm the level of model builder that it takes to accomplish a goal, which is to construct a model. And then I paint those models to hide all the mistakes that I made, too much glue, gaps left, whatever. Kind of like painting sheetrock. Yeah, you can hopefully paint over your bad mudding, which is, I'm terribly bad at mudding sheetrock. So it's kind of the good enough method. Hopefully at some point I will gain better skills and knowledge to do a better job at these, but for now, this is my level of expertise. All right, my element's done. So now to build the supports. Now these things are really definitely kind of a pain because as you can see, there's no posts, there's no holes, there's no way to match these up perfectly. So this is where you're just going to have to make them match to begin with. And again, this glue really helps in this regard because you can kind of just get it close enough and the glue will help to help keep it together with just enough tack that you can do the rest. But as long as you get it started to where the ends match up and hopefully one side doesn't hang over the other. A good idea would be to check and see if there is a Plastruct product that is the same diameter as these, and then you could just use a solid piece of styrene and replace these. I don't know if that exists or not. This is what I'm doing for now, but that'd be a neat thing to find out. So I'm just trying to make sure that there's no overhang on the top or bottom too much. And there you see after just a few seconds, it's holding itself together so I can glue the rest. And when I said it gets tacky within seconds, you can still adjust things a little bit, but it doesn't take long to make that impossible. I'm just making sure I'm thorough and getting all of the joint covered with glue. And then the other side is much easier to do because the one side is holding the whole thing together already. This joint's so good I can't even see it. All right, there's one, two more. I'm sorry if my picture's off center sometimes. I forget, and I'm just using my phone to record here. I forget that the camera is on one end of my phone, so I'm trying to remember that and readjust what I'm doing so you can see. If it wasn't for this quick setting glue, this would be an all day long build, because using the old-fashioned tester's glue, you know, you'd have to put these together, probably wrap them with a rubber band or a clamp or something until they dried really well, and then come back and do all the parts like that. And you're basically watching me put this together live, so you can see on the timer on your video there how long it's taken for me to do this, which is good because I have to build 8 of them, so that takes a little while. All right, 2 down, 1 to go. All right, now for final assembly of a single support. Now, the one interesting thing about this model is there's no bottom to these. And so what I've done is I've pre-cut a styrene strip, which is a pretty thin. I think it's like 0.004 millimeters or something like that. So it's pretty thin. I'm going to use it as a base for the bottom, so these things have something to rest on, and then that increases at least a little bit stability until glue takes hold and ballast can get it covered. But that's the point of that. So at this point, I'm just inserting these columns in the base. Not really any glue necessary. I haven't glued any of them before. I don't really see the point, but it's something you could do. And then we'll put the top on. And then for height, I didn't really try to measure an appropriate height. If you build them as designed with the support columns all the way to the bottom of the base, it's definitely tall enough to clear your double stack containers. And I'll even get a ruler out here to show you. All right, so we're looking at, you can see that there, just a hair under 4 inches, just a 1/16 or so short of 4 inches. All right, so that's one of those. So now I've got two, and I will place those on my styrene here, and then marry those together like that. And that'll be a single unit, and I'll just have to build 3 more of those. I'm not going to show you how I glue these together because it's very delicate. It's difficult how I have to reach around to the back. Just the way I glue this, it's just going to be kind of difficult to even film myself doing that. So I'll just show you the final product when that's done. All right, and there you have a single unit with the base glued on, them joined together, and that one's ready to go on the layout. Actually, you need to paint that first as a single unit. So a lot of these glue stains you might see or whatever, that's all going to get covered up by paint. All right, the next aspect of construction is to build the decking that the cars will actually travel on for the bridge. So you see these bottles here. That is a single piece of deck for one of these kits. And you can kind of see the line. We'll use this here. Right down here is the long side, and then there's the short side, and then there's the other end. So I've used elements of 4 pieces of one of these kits, and I think it comes with 3. I think each one is an HO scale length of 50 feet. And so I've used 8 pieces to get my full bridge, and I'll show you what that looks like in place here in just a second. So here's the bridge deck as complete, laid on the layout here. And you can see I've cut it short from either end of the layout, and that's just to make sure it doesn't overhang and then, possibly catch on somebody's shirt as they walk by or anything like that. So once I've got this in place, then it's time to build the girders and add those on. So we'll show you how I do that. All right, this is that Rick's Products 150-foot overpass. You can see here, this is this instruction manual. You can see here, this is the support structure instructions, which I just showed you. And now what we're going to focus on is the roadway. And you can see those 5 beams underneath the roadway. There's 2 different types, the more symmetrical one, and then there's one here that you can flip either side to make those middle ones. What I'm going to do is a slight variation. So this is a single piece of roadway, and I've done 2 side by side to give me my 3 lanes. So one of these edge I-beams I'm going to put right down the seam of the 2 side-by-side pieces of roadway, and then the others I'll do as pictured here. So that'll be a total of 9 beams across my bridge. So I'm going to show you how I do that for the first 9 across, but then the rest of it's just repeated over and over, so I won't show you the whole thing. We'll just do these 9. All right, so we're going to take a stab at putting these beams on, and I've got one of these symmetrical ones first that we're going to do on the edges. So I'm going to start with the far edge. Now, as you can see, I've already cut this bridge to fit on my layout the way I want it to. And number one, I did that first because obviously it's a lot easier just to cut a flat sheet of anything instead of having to cut through these beams. But number two, what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to offset these beams because I want them to go all right to the edge, right? But offsetting it is going to make sure it covers a lot of these seams which will give it some more strength. So we'll start with that, and I've just got my trusty bottle of extra thin cement here. Got a brand new one so I can get glue on it a little bit easier, but I just need to make sure it's lined up to the edge. And we're just putting a strip of glue right along the gap. All right, that first one's in place. Now I'm going to do the middle one. So it's going to go right along that seam you can see there to help provide extra support for that joint. Sometimes it's hard to get these things started, but once you put a little bit of glue down to hold it in place, then it becomes a lot easier. Let's make sure this first one is centered. Now on these middle ones, I'm going to probably go ahead and do it on both sides just to make sure it's got plenty of strength to it. And I don't know how necessary it is to be perfect with the glue here. This is something that's going to be pretty stable. It's not going to move. It might get bumped, but as a single unit, it should be just fine. All right, I'm going to push this a little forward if I can clear some space and do this front edge. If I can find the right beam. There we go. Okay, so I've got the easy ones done. Next I'll do the middle ones, which is still going to be that symmetrical I-beam. And I'm just going to eyeball these. I tried marking it out the first time I did the first bridge, but the measurements weren't exact. It was like down like 30/2 of an inch, which is kind of hard to mark with a Sharpie. So I decided just to kind of wing it and eyeball it, and it turned out just fine. And you got to remember, and I mean, I'm not Boomer Diorama, and I'm never going to be, and I've accepted that a long time ago. But so what I've kind of decided myself is, what are people going to look at? What are people going to be able to see? And when I realized that, how much effort should I put into things like that? And so, you know, like I'm doing here, I'm just eyeballing the center line for this. How many people are going to look underneath this highway bridge to see how perfect these beams are going to be? You know, and if that's what they're doing, then they're kind of missing the point of the railroad as far as I'm concerned. And if they want to tell me I did a horrible job, I can accept that, because I didn't put a lot of effort into that. But again, if they're looking at things like that, well, I'm probably just never going to win any awards, and I can live with that. We all have limited amounts of time that we can work on our hobby, so we all have to make personal decisions on, you know, how much effort you want to put into a different thing. You know, it seems like I'm really globbing the glue on, and I am. I'm not going to be shy about that. I'm just trying to make this quick and painless as I can. All right, we got that center one. Now we'll do the next center one. I'm just trying to eyeball these to make sure it's as close to center as possible, that the ends match up more or less, and that they're just kind of parallel with the others. I'm thinking about, you know, what's going to stand out the most to the eye, which, I mean, these are going to be in shadow the whole time. I have played around with installing lights underneath these bridges, but I kind of like to do what the prototype does, so I'm going to do some research and see if they have lights under there. It's a pretty big bridge, so it wouldn't surprise me if they did, but I don't know. Honestly, once you build the supports for this bridge kit, the rest of it goes together pretty quick. All right, so I got all the I-beams in place. Now we're going to do those C-shaped ones instead. And you can see that the way they're designed on that diagram, or way they're laid out, the C part faces outward. So we just have to remember that. Here we got one here. Again, just trying to make it as centered as possible. Some of these pieces do have kind of like a natural bend to them from the molding process, I'm guessing, or just from the way that they're packaged. So you have to be wary of that when you're gluing them down to try to straighten that bend out. There's one. And I'm speaking during this video, but I may end up just fast forwarding all this just to speed this up. Otherwise, this is going to be a really long video, so we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here and just do the rest of this section. Okay, I've got the rest of them in, and you can see, you know, for eyeballing, I don't think that looks too bad. So now what I'm going to do is do the rest of them on down the rest of the bridge. At that end, you can see, once I clear all this stuff out of the way, you can see there's another angle at that end. And so what I'll do once I get to that point There'll be obviously some overhang. I'll just use a Sharpie to mark at the end where I need to cut. And then I'll just use a handsaw, and I'll show you one of those real quick in case, I mean, pretty common really. This is what I'll be using, just one of these model hobby handsaws. Goes right through this styrene like butter. And then I'll glue that in place, and it'll look, you know, just like this end. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'll get back with you and show you the finished product. All right, so we've got all the beams in place, the support beams for this road bed. And you can see if we're just eyeballing it, it doesn't look horrible, but it also took probably half the amount of time. So now we're going to flip this thing over, and according to the instructions, all we have left to do is these guardrails on either side. So that'll be pretty easy to do. They go on pretty quick. We'll show you how I do that real quick. Okay, now the last step is to do these railings, which they just set right on the edge. I'll just probably show you a couple of these and then do the rest of them and then show you the final product. And then the last one at the other end, I'm going to have to trim with that handsaw like I did the beams below. All right, there's the first two. I'll do the rest and then show you the final product. And here you have the finished bridge. You can see the railings are on the side, are all installed, and it looks pretty much like the other ones. So apparently I didn't do too bad a job. I went ahead and painted the supports. I have yet to paint the deck, obviously, so I'll do that. And then once that's in place, still need to stripe the roadways. Probably obviously going to do some weathering with some oil streaks, tire wear, those kinds of things. And that'll come down the road at some point. But here we have our other 3 lanes of I-135 and the bridge that crosses the Wichita Yard. Thanks for watching.